Next up, we have Barton Gold. ASX code is BGD. Joining us at the virtual gold conference today is the Managing Director and CEO, Alex Scanlon. Alex, great to see you. First up, let's talk about Barton Gold. Give us the overview.
Well, thank you for having me. A quick background on Barton Gold for people who haven't been following it. We are a recently IPO'd company, so we just IPO'd on the 28th of June this year. And essentially what we are is we are an advanced explorer with essentially prime position in a proven gold district. And what I'm talking about is the central Gawler Craton of South Australia. So this is a world-class mineral province, which in the middle, in the central Gawler Craton, has actually been underexplored for quite some time. It's an area that perhaps fell out of favor as people were looking at other jurisdictions, but there's a long record of historical exploration and historical production. So we've got about 4,600 square kilometers of ground there, both wholly owned ground and joint venture ground. And what we're bringing is an entirely new approach to old assets. These assets have been around for a long time. In fact, a couple billion years, but to the extent they've been explored in the past, they've really been underexplored. And in this particular area, that's been quite true for about 20 years or more. There's really been no modern systematic exploration until we came along. And during the past 2 years, before we actually brought the assets to IPO, we undertook a bunch of technical work, which we might consider foundational formative work, which has really been game-changing. It's really changed the perspective of these assets. This has included very high-resolution aeromagnetic surveys, regional seismic surveys, test drilling, structural studies, and reprocessing of a lot of historical data. And what that's done is identified new large-scale structures, entirely new gold zones, and major resource extension potential across two very large mineral systems. So in coming to an IPO, we're actually bringing something that is an established foundation, which has critical mass. Again, we've got over 1 million ounces in JORC resources, and we also own the only gold mill in the Gawler Craton. So in a funny way, the end goal for most asset explorers is actually our starting point. And from that, we are looking to take a real leadership role in the central Gawler Craton, redevelop that area. We want to enhance this focus on South Australia as a gold exploration jurisdiction. Our focus is really on our Tarcoola and our Tunkillia projects. So these are, again, two large-scale systems where our pre-IPO work has shown huge potential. At Tarcoola, what we're looking at there, by way of high-level summary, is a new regional structural model, which has demonstrated about 14 kilometers of repeat style or analogous faults and shears that are in the vicinity of the shear which hosted the original high-grade open pit mine there, the Perseverance mine. And at Tunkillia, we've actually completely remodeled that mineralization. We've broken it down and subdomained it. And we've done a lot of geophysical analysis to think about where do we find potential significant extensions or repeats of that type of mineralization. So we've got a new 965,000 ounce resource there and potential major high-grade extensions. So these are two distinct mineral systems that have very significant discovery potential. And I'd note again too, when we think about these two projects, we're talking about what we refer to as our southern hub. So these are about 1 million ounces in resources taken together within a 70-kilometer diameter. So a very compelling project hub, particularly as you continue to build either or both of them up for resources. So key thing for us is, we're starting big, we're aiming big. We're not targeting, a 50,000 ounce per annum operation. We're targeting multi-million ounce discoveries and resource bases. We're targeting large future operations. We've got a very experienced leadership team. This team, including our board, reflects really our forward ambitions to move beyond just being an advanced explorer. And we're also working on further building up our in-house project development and geology team. So we're really building up those capabilities. We think our path forward is very, very exciting. As we mentioned, we completed an IPO recently, is oversubscribed. We were very well capitalized to systematically test our highest priority targets. And we've already done that, having a few weeks ago now completed over 5,000 meters of drilling at our Tarkula project. So that was actually completed within 5 weeks of IPO.
That's extraordinary. 5,000 meters within 5 weeks of the IPO is amazing. I need to ask you, and for all those people listening out there, there have been previous owners, and by way of background, Alex, you're a financial economist. I mean, you've seen projects like this before, and you're running, I guess, the economic modeling across this as well. It'd be interesting to hear your background and how that is helping you understand this geology where others haven't in the past?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think really important to understand is, we have a very strong geology team that supports us. So I'm not a geologist, and I pay very close attention to what they say from that side. And my job is, as it were, is really to think about things from the economic side of things, to think about things from the strategic side of things. My personal background, from an educational standpoint, I am a combination of a financial economist and financier. Background is sort of a mixed bag of principal investments, structured finance, and corporate advisory. So during the past 10 years or more, I've spent time essentially dedicated to the resources sector in Australia and some other jurisdictions, advising not only resources, explorers and developers and operators on their sort of corporate strategy, financial strategy, and financing, but actually also working on several projects in terms of from the principal investment perspective. So my background is a little bit more based on the coming up with the ideas and then looking at how do we advance them and how do we mitigate the risk or optimize the efficiency of how we approach that. And that has worked very well historically in pairing essentially my focus with the technical capabilities of very good people in the technical teams. The objective, of course, is to get into this program and not only discover things, but to do things on a very cost-efficient basis, which is one reason why we do a lot of sort of leading technical work before we get into a lot of drilling. We want to make sure that when we are drilling a target or seeking to discover something, we've done the structural work such that we are appropriately targeting and risk weighting our drilling investments so that we hope that we can achieve a higher hit rate. But we've also done an appropriate amount of work to say, if we have a higher hit rate, we might also believe that we should have a preponderance of positive results within that higher hit rate. That often means investing $200,000 before you invest $2 million in a drilling program, but that can pay off in multiples when you think about the efficacy or the savings in not having a lot of dusters, if you will, in terms of sort of drilling, exploration by drilling in the very sort of old-fashioned wildcat sense.
So yours is very much targeted at drilling. I want to look at the projects that you've got. You've talked about the fact that it is the Central Gawler Craton in South Australia. Mm-hmm. Is it close to infrastructure? And let's just talk about them. You've got Tarcoola, Tunkillia. Those are your two projects that you're focused on at the moment. If you can explain to our investor audience at the moment, you mentioned 5,000 meters of drilling.
Yep.
Where are you going with that? And that was at Tarcoola. We'll then go into Tunkillia. But why should investors be getting excited about what you're seeing at Tarcoola at the moment?
I think one of the really important things is the significant extent of the ground that we have there. So we've got 1,200 square kilometers of ground, which is right bang in the center of the Central Gawler Craton. So this is right at some of the most interesting tectonic features and where the tectonic plates are coming together. It's an area that has historically had very rich gold mineralization. In fact, where the Perseverance mine is, the open pit mine on our Tarkula project, that was mined in 2017 and 18. And during 2018, it was producing between 4 and 6 grams per ton to our mill, which is an infrastructure point I'll come back to. But that is actually just kind of a very small portion of the Tarcoola ranges, which run across the mining lease. And this was the site of the Tarkula gold rush in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So very hard work, very artisanal style of mining. But what was mined there from shallow sort of quartzite outcropping veins was about 77,000 ounces at 37.5 grams per ton in the early 1900s. So very, very, very rich mineralization. Obviously, a lot of fluid movement, a lot of gold deposition. Nobody has actually systematically worked through that from a modern perspective. And that's what we're bringing back to this and what we're doing differently. As you mentioned, we've just done 5,000 meters of drilling at Tarcoola. That follows a 5,000 meter program we did last year as well to sort of get a bearing on where we're going. That program was very interesting because what we know is that historically, even just around this high grade open pit, it has been very underdrilled. There's very, very little drilling around the pit, extensions of the pit, extensional targets on known structures, and below the pit. So we took a good hard look at the historical data. And we also identified multiple areas where, okay, when we see a number of historical high-grade hits, very impressive hits, that simply weren't followed up. And that was really due, in many cases, looking at the history of these assets, to capital restriction. So owners that are focused elsewhere in their exploration portfolio or are focused on production. And so their exploration budget has been artificially reduced. When we also look at Tarcoola, what we've done to sort of step out from the pit in the first instance is complete some additional geophysical programs. So we've actually also completed, alongside the drilling, a ground penetrating radar program. What's exciting about that, again, is if we can get some good resolution out of that, then we are looking at targeting those potentially shallow, prominent structures which are running across that mining lease in the vicinity of the pit, and looking for essentially near surface, small scale lookalikes of that very prominent regional model that we saw, which is sort of what we think indicative of multiple repeats or indicative of potential repeats of that high grade Perseverance style mineralization. At the pit itself, we're targeting both the north end of the pit and the south end of the pit. I mentioned our drilling last year, which discovered an entirely new gold zone right at the edge of the pit, which we've called Perseverance West. So it really then, I think, illustrates how underexplored these assets were. It's currently about a 200-meter long gold zone that was previously unknown. So we've come back and we've tested that, infilled that, and are looking to extend that. We're also testing some near pit targets in the form of the Archer prospect, but also then looking at the north end of the pit. Again, very, very under-drilled. There was a high-grade chute there that ended in the pit floor. The north end of the pit is probably only about 20, 25 meters deep. So looking at potential extensions of that high-grade chute could yield some very interesting low-hanging fruit. And in both of these areas, obviously with an existing open pit in good condition, some very high-value production ounces if we build onto that pit. So we've actually released some videos of the Perseverance pit drilling, or the drilling around the Perseverance pit, over the past few weeks, that really give investors, I think, a better opportunity to get an eyeball on what we're doing, to see,
Here it is.
see that, yeah, not only to see the rigs at work, but actually to understand what it really looks like, what's going on. It's open area, it's unobstructed, and we've got this very clean open pit that is, well positioned to be a start, but indeed just the start of a much broader strategy. So gravity work on the mining lease, ground penetrating radar work on the mining lease, but also regional gravity surveys. We're going to be starting these in the broader vicinity of the Tarkula project. And that is going to pair with our historical data, but also our ultra high resolution aeromagnetics we did last year. The objective is to look for replications of the sort of stratigraphic and structural let's say anomalies, but the most valuable stratigraphic and structural features we've found in known data, and really look at expanding outwards. So the work that we're doing near the pit is about building new stories around that existing mining lease, but a lot of work that we're doing really replicates the strategy that we put in place last year. We are preparing to expand outward substantially and really sharpen up our understanding of that new 14-kilometer long structure, so that we can get in there and do follow-up drilling before the end of the year. So really, really working at pace. As you mentioned, we are also going over to Tunkillia. We're ramping up 6,000-meter drilling program there right now. And the objective, again, bearing in mind Tarcoola and Tunkillia is these two large-scale systems, is to really throw open the door in terms of the potential for each of these to become standalone, large-scale, multi-structure, multi-deposit development assets. The Perseverance mine has already proved that it can yield high-grade material. That material went to our mill, and it's surrounded by these high-grade intercepts. So there's a lot of exciting targets. And we are testing those now. When we look at Tunkillia, again, we've already got in the 223 deposit a 965,000 ounce resource. And to put that in perspective, it is a resource across about 2.5 kilometers of strike. Now, from our perspective, and I think in keeping with our sort of philosophy here, that really is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of potential. That 2.5 kilometers sits within about a 16-kilometer long structure, which hosts that deposit. So the host structure, or the mineralization which hosts the 223 deposit, is known to extend geologically, geophysically, and geochemically both 7 kilometers to the north and to the south. And when we look at this, the shear zone system there, the Yarbrinda shear zone, is really analogous to these sort of Kalgoorlie style shear zone systems. So large, broad, and when we look at historical drilling, there was a lot of very, very shallow historical pattern drilling there that identified the 223 deposit. interestingly, despite a number of shallow, very interesting intercepts, essentially only the 223 deposit was followed up. So most drilling, the substantial majority of all drilling historically went into upgrading that deposit. So we have a number of satellite targets where we have already have the benefit of historical data demonstrating there's something interesting going on. And that gives us a lot of potentially very, very high value targets to follow up. It's very high value roadmap. And what we're looking at now, what we're going to be drilling is not sort of nibbling away at the edges of the existing 223 deposit, but we're stepping out, right? We're looking at potential significant offset extensions. So we're looking at 1 to 2 kilometers north of the 223 deposit where it currently is bounded, and a kilometer to the south as well. So significant step outs. But we're also stepping out and targeting an entirely new area about 4 kilometers to the northwest, which is the Area 51 target. This is something that we think geophysically, but also in terms of historical drilling, has potential to essentially become established as an independent resource, and really, I think, change the nature of the way the market views this asset, and actually create the potential that where you have this 223 deposit, you have all of these satellite targets that actually have the potential to construct this area as a multi-million ounce camp. And that is just the northern portion of this shear zone. We've got another 25 kilometers that extend down from the base of the 223 deposit. So for us, we're very excited. We put a lot of time into analyzing these assets before we acquired them. We put a lot of time and money into analyzing them since, and now we are very well funded to get after this work. We have got a great team. We've got proven partnerships. We've got the same drillers. Bullion Drilling have done a great job for us last year. We've had them out this year, and they are punching out the holes and dealing with difficult situations. Same geology team, same project manager, Andrew Bales, who I've worked closely with on the ground there to help programs in any way we can. Andrew Bales is one of our sort of secret weapons. He's the weekend prospector himself, if you haven't seen the show. But we've got, we'll continue building our team, we'll continue building that capability, and we have very high confidence in our execution.
That was a very, very well-rounded presentation. We're running out of time. Alex, I just want to ask for all of our investors out there, some of whom may not be geologists, why do you think now is a good time for investors to sit up and take notice of BGD as an investment potential?
Good question. I think really simple answer. Again, we've just been listed. We're very well funded. And I think point number one, we've completed the technical work to tell us where we're going. So we understand our opportunities and we know where we're going. Two, those opportunities are pointing us to very, very large scale opportunities across 2 very large scale mineralized systems. And 3, we've got the right team and a proven ability to execute, which particularly in this market is everything.
Well, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Barton Gold, ASX code BGD. Alex Scanlon is the Managing Director and CEO, clearly looking after shareholder funds and really chasing the big, big ticket items down there in South Australia. Thanks for joining us at the Virtual Gold Conference today.
Thank you for having me.